No, you can go.
You're recording?
Yeah, I'm just recording, but you can go ahead and go live. He's fucking mad. Mm-hmm. I think we just missed her too.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Not bad. I need to speak to somebody in charge here.
If you're looking for my boss, he is in a meeting. And actually,
What?
my second in command is not here at the moment either.
I need to talk to somebody
What is it regarding?
regarding the festival downtown and Christie Freeland and stuff.
Oh, okay. The Deputy Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You guys are putting on a show for her down there? She's involved in that, or is that what the deal is?
Check her. I know she's in town right now.
I did call in earlier, and whoever I spoke to didn't have the itinerary.
Let me just look on her, I think her website has her itinerary. Let me just.
Shouldn't you guys have the itinerary since you guys are hosting all of this stuff for her?
Post it on her website. We're getting it this morning.
Oh, right there she is. Elliot. Right there. Great, that's Christina.
Christia! Yes? What the fuck are you doing in Alberta? You fucking traitorous fucking bitch! Get the fuck out of this province!
You don't belong here.
You're a fucking traitor! You fucking bitch!
Yeah, go ahead and hide.
Alright guys, you got a traitor in the fucking elevator. Christie Freeland, I'm going. I'll walk up with my own power. Don't touch me, okay? Don't touch me. Go.
We
Do
are
not
leaving.
touch me.
We are leaving.
Do you love that? Do you love her? Do you love Christie Freeland?
No. Yeah.
I fucking hope not. Don't tell me you did. I'll walk out with my own power, okay? So back off. Fucking back off. I know this gentleman here. That fucking cunt shouldn't even be allowed in Alberta. She's destroying this country. Your kids are gonna have no future. Okay? I hope you get it. Somebody's gotta get it. Because we're the only ones fighting for this country right now. And it sure as hell isn't her.
Thank you, Canada. Thank you, Tracy Vowles, for this very nice video clip of this pissed off guy. Yeah, hello to you all. You're watching RHTVLive from Maastricht. Ja, daar zenden we uit, mensen. Maastricht. Dus je kijkt naar RHTV Live. En we hebben natuurlijk wel heel veel nieuws. Er gebeurt wel veel in de wereld. Niet in Nederland natuurlijk, want hier is het dikke stront door een dunne trechter. Maar als we nou naar het buitenland kijken, ja, er gebeurt veel in het buitenland. Irak staat op de radar. And for the English that are also watching, we're going to look at what's happening in the Middle East, in Iraq, right? But first, we're going to take a look in Syria. What's happening in Syria? Ja, mensen, wat gebeurt daar allemaal? Het is onvoorstelbaar. Amerika heeft Syrië aangevallen middels gevechtsvliegtuigen die bommen naar beneden laten vallen en zoiets. Het is echt onvoorstelbaar. We gaan even naar de beelden kijken. So the US has attacked Syria and they have been attacking so-called Iranian militias. Ja. Dus de Iraanse militie, die hebben ze zogenaamd aangevallen. Ik zeg zogenaamd, want je weet maar nooit met Amerika. Maar we gaan naar wat beelden kijken hier zo. US attacks Iran-backed militias in Syria. Let's watch the images.
The strike was necessary to protect and defend U.S. personnel in Syria, which have been the targets of several recent attacks by Iran-backed militia groups.
The U.S. has no right to exist in Syria, and the U.S. government's military operation against the Syrian army, whether the regular one or other organizations that support the Syrian army, are illegal. Iran is reiterating that Washington's claims that some Syrian armed groups are attached to Iran are baseless and worthless.
We were talking about this when Biden stepped into the office, right? Because what did Trump do to Iran? You guys remember? Blockade. Iran was the enemy and stuff like that. Now, Obama had nuclear deals on the table with Iran. And Trump wiped it off table, blockaded Iran, and stuff like that. Now you have Biden in office, right? And the deal is on table again. So, ja, dat gebeurt, mensen. Trump heeft de deal van tafel geveegd. De deal die Obama gemaakt heeft met Iran. En om nucleaire verrijking te doen. En nu hebben we dus Biden in het Witte Huis. En die zegt van nou, die nucleaire verrijking, die kunnen jullie wel weer gaan doen hoor. Ja, doe maar. Dat is goed voor Iran. Dus dat gebeurt allemaal, mensen. En we hebben het ook over Syrië. Nou, Syrië heeft dus Iran en Rusland uitgenodigd. Weet u nog, Syrië werd aangevallen door proxies die wij gesteund hebben als Nederland zijnde. Debat al-Shamia, die ik al heel vaak laat zien. Maar nog een keer, kijk, Nederland gaf steun aan jihadisten in Syrië. Je zou zeggen dat het een complottheorie is, maar het is echt waar. Nederland heeft in Syrië een jihadistische beweging gesteund. Ja, en de eerste zin klopt dan niet, hè. Want verderop, hier zo tussen mei 2015 en voorjaar 2018, steunde Nederland 22 gewapende gematigde groepen in Syrië. Dus die eerste zin klopt dan niet. Nederland heeft in Syrië een jihadistisch... Ja, dat betekent dat je eentje steunt. En verderop lees je 22 gewapende gematigde groepen. Die kregen voor ruim 25 miljoen euro aan auto's en zoiets allemaal. Het is echt heel, heel erg triest. Maar goed. Syrië heeft dus aan Iran gevraagd van kunnen jullie ons beschermen tegen de groeperingen die wij dus steunden om Syrië omver te werpen. Ja. This is the Netherlands. We gave support to the jihadis in Syria, to 22 groups that were armed, and we gave them 25 million euros and 313 cars in total, and food, medication, communication devices, tents, uniforms, and we trained them. So, anyway, Syria is asking Iran for protection, and the US is attacking Iran, right? So, and we were talking about the nuclear development within Iran. right? Because Biden says you can develop nuclear power if you want, you know. Zo, dit gebeurt allemaal, mensen. Het is echt te triest voor woorden. Maar we kijken even door hier.
The agreement can become sustainable if all parties comply with their obligations. Iran is now reviewing and considering the text of the agreement in hopes of taking another step forward.
Our commitment to push back against Iran's support for terrorism, militancy, and the threats that they engage in against our people in the region or elsewhere are not linked to wherever we end up on the nuclear deal.
So the Netherlands backs militias, right, to overthrow Syria, but nothing is done with that. Nope. Gebeurt niks. Nee hoor. Nee. Iran supports some militias like Hezbollah in Lebanon, right? Here we have Lebanon, and we must put sanctions on Iran. You know, we must put sanctions on them. We moeten sancties opleggen op Iran. Want ze hebben een proxy, Hezbollah, dat in Libanon opereert. Wat fout van Iran. Oh, wat fout. Oh. Maar goed. Ik heb Iran, Afghanistan niet zien binnenvallen. Ja, jij wel. Ik niet hoor. Maar goed. We hebben 20 jaar lang in Afghanistan gezeten. We were 20 years in Afghanistan, right? And what's happening in Afghanistan? There was a drone attack. You guys remember that? The top leader of Al-Qaeda was bombed in Kabul. De topleider in Kabul, die is doodgebombardeerd door een droneaanval. Nou, hoe komt het nou dat Amerika dat kan doen? Want ze mogen niet over Iraanse luchtruim vliegen. Dat gaat dus via Pakistan. Ja, Pakistan. Kennen we nog wel, hè? Die voormalige president die dus afgetreden is, Imran Khan. Die het parlement stopgezet. Die heeft gezegd van er is buitenlandse intrusie in onze politiek. We moeten dat uit gaan wassen en zoiets allemaal. En toen is hij omvergeworpen. Ja, en Pakistan geeft dus Amerika de schuld. Althans, Imran Khan geeft Amerika de schuld van een coup dat gepleegd is in Pakistan. So Imran Khan, this is the former president of Pakistan, he shut down parliament because he saw foreign intrusion within parliament and he wanted to clean that out, and basically parliament threw him out, right? And he says that this is a US coup, US-backed coup in Pakistan. Now you might say, right, that the United States doesn't do that because they stand for freedom and stuff like that. Now let's see this list here of countries that the US overthrew, right? We'll start at the 1900s because, you know. So during the 1910s, 1912 to 1933 Nicaragua. Hey, wait a minute. That rings a bell, right? During the 80s, Reagan. 1913 to 1919 Mexico. 1915 to 1934 Haiti. 1916 to 1924 Dominican Republic. 1917 Costa Rica. 1917 to 1919 Germany, Austria-Hungary, Russia. There's a whole list of countries that were overthrown basically by the imperial powers of America. You see, 1944, 1945, Netherlands. My country is also involved. Very, very sad to see. So they also overthrew the Dutch government, right? So let's see what the former Prime Minister of Pakistan has to say. And we'll get back to the drone attacks. Ja, we gaan even kijken naar de voormalige president van Pakistan. Dit is een paar maanden geleden, mei 30, 2022. Toen was hij net afgezet.
The march you're threatening now if no new elections are announced. What do you hope to achieve?
Well, Mark, what every Democrat hopes to achieve from a peaceful protest, what I hope to achieve is to show the whole of the country that the people of this country want one thing: elections. They do not want a foreign imposed government where members of our party were bought by $1 million each, who was offered to them to switch sides, and then the government was removed. And so therefore we feel that rather than someone else imposing a government on our country, let the people of this country decide whoever they want to lead them.
But you were toppled, you say, by a Western conspiracy. You called it, I think, US-backed regime change. I mean, it's quite a claim. What evidence do you have? What do you base that claim on?
Well, as the Prime Minister, I get a cipher. Cipher is a secret a message sent by your ambassadors. They are sent to the Foreign Office. It's like in WikiLeaks, WikiLeaks was when they broke the code, so the secret messages were relayed to the public. So I get a cipher from my ambassador in the US, and it's an official meeting he has with this American undersecretary or whatever, Donald Lu. And me as the Prime Minister, I'm reading this cipher, and it says that unless you remove your Prime Minister through this vote of no confidence, which hadn't been tabled as yet, there will be consequences for Pakistan. And if you remove him, all will be forgiven. Now this is what me as a Prime Minister reading this cipher. And I'm the chief executive. Who was he asking to have me removed?
So he gets a letter, right, from the U.S. State Department, some kind of bozo in the U.S. State Department, and says, you have to leave. Je moet vertrekken. Ja, krijg gewoon een brief van Amerika, je moet vertrekken. Anders, puntje. Ja. Dus als we even teruggaan naar de Irak-oorlog, de interventie in Irak, of Irak inderdaad, dan zien we daar ook een hele grote voetafdruk in Amerika, of in Irak, een Amerikaanse voetafdruk in Irak. Ja. In Iran hebben ze het al geprobeerd in de jaren 50. Ja. Dan gaan we even hier naartoe. Hier, Iran, 52, 53. Operatie Ajax heette dat. Operation Ajax. Right? So there's a very big US imprint in Iraq, or was, and they want the same in Pakistan. Now, why is this important? And what does it have to do with the drone attack in Kabul, right? As I've said before, America is not allowed to enter Iranian airspace, right? Now, Imran Khan was a president who said, we don't want any drone attacks. We don't give you permission to fly over our airspace into Afghanistan, right? Hij gaf er geen toestemming voor. Nou, daarom moet die worden verwijderd. Ja, en wat zien we hier zo? Taliban accused Pakistan of aiding US drone attacks.
Problems don't end there. They're facing neighbor troubles to the north, courtesy the Taliban. On paper, they're a match made in heaven. Pakistan uses terror as a state policy. The Taliban use terror as their only policy. But recently, things have escalated. The issue seems to be American drones. The US is carrying out airstrikes against terror targets in Afghanistan. The most important strike took place last month. A US drone took out Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri. He was living in Kabul at the time. The US claims Zawahiri was killed in that drone strike, but the Taliban claim no body has been recovered from the site. Now, this raises questions about the US strike. Did it really hit the Al-Qaeda chief? And where exactly are those drones coming from? The US does not have a military base in the region. Their closest one is in the Gulf. Now, if the drones did come from West Asia, which route did they take? Reports say they came via Pakistan. They flew over Pakistan. Now, this is the possible route taken by US drones flying to Afghanistan, from Dubai to Karachi and from Karachi to Quetta, and then over the border to Afghanistan. There is nothing new about this arrangement, if this is indeed what happened. After invading Afghanistan in 2001, US forces consistently used Pakistani airspace. Their fighter jets, their drones, their transport aircraft, all of them flew over Pakistan. And reports say that arrangement is still in place. Just one problem though, the Taliban are not happy about it. They're asking Pakistan to stop sharing its airspace.
Our information indicates that the US drones are entering Afghanistan from Pakistan and using the airspace of Pakistan. We demand Pakistan not to use its airspace against us.
Pakistan has denied that charge. They say the US is not using their airspace. Neither side is famous for transparency or facts, so it's hard to say who is telling the truth. Instead, let's focus on the larger picture. Why are Pakistan and the Taliban sparring? In April this year, Islamabad launched airstrikes on Afghanistan. They hit targets in Kunar and Khost provinces. The reason? Retaliation for attacks by Pakistan's homegrown Taliban, the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Islamabad was expecting more help from the new regime in Kabul. After all, there are links between the two Taliban. Their ideology is similar. There are common Sunni links, even familial ties between the rank and file. But the Afghan Taliban have not been willing to help. They did mediate a ceasefire, but they have not been willing to use force, and that decision has irked Pakistan. So that's one sticking point. Another reason is the border. Pakistan recognizes the Durand Line as the official border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. The Taliban do not recognize that. In fact, no Afghan government can ever recognize that line, the Durand Line. They believe the Pashtun territories held by Pakistan rightfully belong to Afghanistan. So put together, it's been a bad investment. No help against the TTP, no recognition of the border. The Afghan Taliban are playing hardball with Islamabad. The question is why? After all, Pakistan is the Taliban's godfather. They supported both their conquests of Kabul. So why has the relation soured? Perhaps because it's not beneficial anymore. In the 1990s, the Taliban was a pariah. They needed Pakistan for aid and weapons, and back then Pakistan could afford it. They were the most important American partner in South Asia. That meant a lot of military and financial aid, which is not the case anymore. The new Taliban regime has more options, better options. China, for one, is willing to invest in the Afghan economy. Russia is warming up to them. And compared to that, Pakistan is powerless. Their economy is on the verge of collapse. Their politics is fractured. and Western aid has disappeared. So naturally, there is friction. Does this mean there will be a breakup? Well, that seems unlikely at the moment. The Pakistani deep state has firm ties within Taliban factions, especially the Haqqani network. Militarily too, Pakistan holds the edge. Their capabilities are far beyond the Taliban's. So right now, a breakup looks very unlikely. At the same time, it may not be a return of the 90s. Back then, Pakistan controlled the Taliban. They used Kabul as a proxy capital. Indications are that may not be the case anymore. WION is
So there you have it. There you have it. This is why the drone attack in Kabul is basically a big question mark, you know? And of course, they're talking about the crisis, the deepening crisis in the region, which is the Kashmir region, right, and Ladakh region. So Pakistan says Kashmir is ours, China says Kashmir is ours, India says Kashmir is ours, and Afghanistan says Kashmir is ours, and the Ladakh territory is ours. You know, so very, very tense situation there. Ja, mensen, dit gebeurt allemaal. Maar we gaan ook even kijken naar Irak, want wat gebeurt daar allemaal? What's happening in Iraq? Well, very, very big demonstrations have been going on for months in Iraq, right in front of Parliament. And there are factions, right? And one of the big guys in Iraq is Muqtada al-Sadr. He's a Shiite. And you have Sunnis and Shia and Shiites, right? And those are the three major factions in Iraq. And they're basically waging a war. Now, this guy used to be the resistance general when the US was in Iraq. So he's a very popular guy, and he just stepped down. Ja. Dus, toen de Amerikaanse interventie was in Irak, dan had je die Muqtada al-Sadr, die dus min of meer het verzet voerde tegen de interventie van de Amerikanen. Dus niet de beste vriend van Amerika. En deze gast heeft dus de meeste zetels behaald. Maar er kan geen coalitie worden gemaakt. Ja, 10 maanden zit ze al te wachten op een kabinet in Irak. En ja, je hebt een interimregering, maar die hebben ook niet veel te zeggen. Die hebben ook niet veel macht. Kunnen niet veel anders doen dan proberen een coalitie voor elkaar te krijgen. Maar ja, dat wordt heel, heel erg moeilijk. Het zijn trammelante tijden in Irak. We gaan even hier naar kijken.
Iraq's powerful Shiite leader Muqtada al-Sadr announces he's quitting politics. This triggers violent protests and demands for new elections. But is there another reason for Sadr's announcement? And can anything contain months of political unrest? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. So, after days of violent protests and fighting, Shiite leader Muqtada al-Sadr has called on his supporters to leave Baghdad's green zone. The unrest was triggered by him announcing that he's quitting politics. They battled Iraqi security forces and rival Shiite factions near government buildings and embassies. Dozens of people were killed. Sadr is one of Iraq's most important figures, wielding enormous influence over many aspects of public life. He denies any involvement in the violence. Laura Burton-Manley has this report.
After 2 days of violence, Baghdad's heavily fortified Green Zone is emptying of protesters. A sharp contrast to earlier scenes. Violence broke out on Monday when powerful Shiite leader Muqtada al-Sadr announced he would quit politics. A day later, he apologised and called on his supporters to stand down and go home.
There were some brutal militias, but the satirists shouldn't be vulgar. I still believe that my supporters are disciplined. That's why if you don't withdraw from the parliament within 60 minutes, I am not going to be the satirist movement leader again. I don't even want you to stage a peaceful demonstration.
It's not the first time Sadr supporters have forced their way into the presidential compound. They've been demonstrating for months.
This is a political rivalry between two different parties or sides of the spectrum. One side trying to maintain the consensus agreement of the constitutional democracy in post-2003 Iraq, and the other side, which is the Sadrist movement, trying to revamp the political system in Iraq.
His party won the most parliament seats in elections in October, but failed to form a majority coalition. Sadr may have told his supporters to stand down, but with such intense rivalry at the heart of Iraqi politics, there are fears it's only a matter of time before chaos and bloodshed is repeated. Laura Burton-Manley for Inside Story, Al Jazeera.
Well, Muqtada al-Sadr rose to prominence after the end of Saddam Hussein's leadership back in 2003. He's against any foreign interference in Iraqi politics. The supporters mainly hail from the poorest sectors of society who've been historically shut out of the political system. Sadr's movement won the most seats in parliamentary elections in October 2021, eclipsing rival Shiite political parties backed by Iran. But after months of failing to form a government, Sadr ordered his MPs to resign in June. A month later, his supporters occupied Parliament and demanded the removal of what they call corrupt politicians.
So there you go. This is happening in Iraq as we speak. So tumultuous times for Iraq and Syria and other countries such as Lebanon, which is also a fractured state after the Beirut blast. Yep. And very, very sad things happening in the Middle East. We also have Israel, right? They're closing down schools, Palestinian schools. Very, very sad thing to see. Let's see if we can put that on screen. Let's see. Here. Israel to close 6 Palestinian schools in occupied East Jerusalem.
For Palestinian children, history isn't just learned from the pages of a school textbook. It is the memories and stories their mothers, fathers, and grandparents ensure they never forget. It is their experiences living under Israeli occupation. Mohammed Abu al-Debat, who's in the 10th grade, is also learning about how history can be rewritten.
It teaches me that if something like this happens in the future, not to keep silent or think this is normal. I have to protest like I am now and stand against the occupation.
In July, the Israeli Education Ministry revoked the permanent licenses of 6 Palestinian schools in occupied East Jerusalem. The education minister declined our request for an interview, but in a statement she says the schools are using textbooks that glorify prisoners' armed struggle against Israel, and they're teaching incitement. The schools have 1 year to remove the books or they'll be closed.
It's like an authoritarian regime that wants to write parts of the truth from his own people. And this is happening to 7-year-old children. This is ridiculous. And we will not allow that.
Since the 1975 order, the Palestinian Authority has overseen the education of its people.
We contacted the donors of the educational sector and the international community to urge them to take action and stop this attack against Palestinian educational system in Jerusalem.
One of the attorneys representing the schools says this is politically motivated censorship that breaches the 1995 Oslo Accords and international laws on occupation.
The basic and most common rule in international law regarding occupied territories, whereas the occupant could never rule an occupied territory with sovereignty. Since one of the main and most inherent instruments of sovereignty is dictation of education.
The legal team representing the schools admits the prospects of prevailing in the Israeli judicial system are slim. These Palestinians say at stake is the erasure of their heritage and identity. Natasha Ganaim, Al Jazeera, occupied East Jerusalem.
So that's what's happening over there, right? Just forget your own history. We dominate you. Very, very sad thing to see, because there was a solution once, a two-state solution, but now everything is wiped out. Ja, mensen, we hebben het gezien in Jeruzalem. Worden scholen die gaan dicht, die mogen hun eigen geschiedenis niet herdenken en zoiets. Althans, dan moeten ze weg gaan halen uit de schoolboeken, want dat mag niet. Ja, dus je moet je eigen geschiedenis vergeten. Laten we niet vergeten dat Palestina ooit een gebied was van het Ottomaanse Rijk. En toen het uit elkaar viel, werd het verdeeld in de geallieerden, waaronder Engeland en Frankrijk. Die hebben voor het groot gedeelte de landen gecreëerd. Zoals Syrië, Irak, Transjordanië kennen we ook nog wel. Hè? En ook Israël in de regio dat eerst Palestina heette, onder het Ottomaanse Rijk. Dus dat is steeds weg aan het appen. En ja, je moet je eigen geschiedenis vergeten. Oh, Israël is zo belangrijk. Oh. Wat ik heel erg vind, is dat er dus ook mensen vanuit Nederland naar Israël toe gaan en zoiets hebben van, die Palestijnen, gevaarlijk. Nee, wat Israël aan het doen is juist gevaarlijk. Die pikken steeds meer land in. En zo komt de haat naar de ander toe. Laat elkaar met rust. Leave each other at peace. You know, make a new state, make it Palestine, whatever, you know, and let these people live in peace. That is what's needed. Ja, dat gaat niet zo snel gebeuren. Hè. Niet als wij een regering hebben die dus islamieten steunt, of jihadisten, die dus een regering omver willen werpen en zoiets. Echt heel, heel erg triest. En je zou je af kunnen vragen van, waarom doe je dit eigenlijk? Hè? Waarom steunen we dit als Nederland zijnde? Nou, het gaat om de voetafdruk die wij kunnen zetten in het Midden-Oosten. Ja, onze interventie gaat om de pijpleiding die dan Saudi-Arabië en Qatar wouden maken. Door Syrië ging en naar Turkije toe. Nou, ik neem aan dat Shell daar ook een groot aandeel in heeft, gezien het een van de grootste bedrijven is binnen Irak. Ja. Dus daarom doet Nederland er ook aan mee. Heel, heel erg triest. En het is niet dat ik voor Assad ben. Nee, dat helemaal niet. Dat zou eigenlijk ook veranderd moeten worden. Een nieuwe machtsstructuur in Syrië. Maar ja, ik kan hem ook niet de schuld geven dat hij eigenlijk de oorlog gewonnen heeft. Wat het omverwerpen van de Syrische staat betreft. Dat is gewoon niet gelukt. Hij is daar nog steeds aan de macht. Ja. Dus, ja, goed, fout. Ik heb daar geen zeggenschap in. Maar ik zou ook voor mijn land gaan strijden. Als me zoiets overkwam. Als Rutte het zo overkomen, dan pakt hij meteen de eerste vliegtuig weg uit Nederland. Zo'n lafbek is het. En dan gaat hij naar Engeland toe. Of een of een ander land waar hij toevlucht zoekt. En zoiets. En Nederland wordt dan overrompeld door de vijand. Maar de vijand komt niet van buiten. Nee. Je gaat ervan uit dat het van buiten komt. Nee, het zit binnen. Het zit binnen Nederland. Binnen Nederland heb je de vijand. Gesteund en wel door de overheid. En ja, heel, heel erg triest. Maar dit gebeurt en mensen zijn er niet bewust van. Mensen denken van, oh, ik doe mee aan een demonstratie. Oh cool man. Ja, je hoort erbij, je hoort erbij. Er was ook zo'n liedje. We hebben een clubje opgericht voor mensen die zijn opgelicht. Je hoort erbij, je hoort erbij. Nou, dat was een beroemde liedje tijdens de gele hesjes. En men denkt van, ja, ik hoor erbij. Terwijl je er eigenlijk gewoon niet echt bij hoort. Heel moeilijk om dat te omschrijven. Maar de Nederlander heeft zoiets van, ja, waar is het podium, waar is het bier, waar is de muziek? En dat politiek gelul, ach boeien, boeien. Terwijl juist dat interessant is. Ja, we moeten juist kijken naar wat er gebeurt in de politiek. En zoiets. Dus er wordt veel te weinig gedaan in Nederland. We moeten, net als die ene gast die we in het begin van de uitzending zagen, moeten we die lui gaan confronteren, die politici. Confronteer die lui. Confront these people. Confront these people, these so-called politicians. That's what we need to do, right? Because we don't want a very violent revolution. We don't want that. We want a peaceful transfer of power from the oligarchs to the population. That's what we want. That's what we need, right? So we're going to take a look in Afghanistan. And we'll see what's changed, basically, because the Taliban was wearing white. Ja, ze hadden witte kleding aan, Wij komen in vrede hoor, we komen in vrede. Met de Kalashnikov in de hand en zoiets. Heel veel mensen trappen daarin. Maar RHTVLive, die is gewoon wakker. En die ziet dat vrouwen onderdrukt worden in Afghanistan. Al heel vaak voor gewaarschuwd. Maar goed, we gaan even hier naar kijken, een paar minuten.
Let's talk to women and girls in Afghanistan about what life is like under the Taliban. Because some of the biggest changes in the last year target this half of the population.
حقوق خانم‌ها پایمال میشه چون کسی بودم همیشه اکتیو بودم کار میکردم فعالیت داشتم حالا در چارچوب خانه
مثلا سرپوشش ما بیشتر از این که به فکر مثلا حکومت گپا باشن زیادتر فوکسشان به سر حجاب گپای ما هستن
همه بخش ها منظم است یک زمینی کار بر ما مساحت نیست.
Every Afghan woman and every Afghan girl has her own take on what's going on. And we've come to Afghanistan to hear from at least a few of them.
First, though, let's get a sense of what some of the new rules are under this Taliban government, many of which came from this place, the Ministry of Vice and Virtue, which replaced the old Ministry for Women's Affairs. It's rules like women aren't allowed to travel long distances without a close male relative. And in May, the Taliban said women had to cover their faces in full while in public. In fact, you'll see posters just like this one across the country. There have been other big changes too. Thousands of women have been stopped from going back to their government jobs. They're essentially being paid to sit at home. And then there's the issue of girls' education. Girls can go to primary school and university, but not secondary school.
Now, these rules are not totally black and white, and there's definitely some inconsistency with how the Taliban are applying and enforcing them. They also say the restrictions on school and work are only temporary, not official policy.
Oh, it's temporary. Temporary. Tijdelijk mensen. Het is maar tijdelijk dat jij je hoofd moet gaan bedekken. En zoiets. Maak je maar geen zorgen hoor. Hier, Ali Bombali met een dikke baard, die gaat jou wel vertellen van ja, het is maar tijdelijk hoor, het is maar tijdelijk. Maar het is maar tijdelijk. Weet je nog de tijdelijke maatregelen in Nederland? Nou, het heeft 2 jaar geduurd. 2 jaar. Goed, het was tijdelijk, maar 2 jaar is toch erg lang hoor. Ja. Of is iedereen dat weer vergeten? Dat we onder een lockdown hebben gezeten 2 jaar lang. Ja. Dat is onvoorstelbaar. Weet je nog, de avondklok? Er was ooit een avondklok in Nederland. Spertijd. Nou, dan praten we niet over de Tweede Wereldoorlog, want daar mocht niet over gepraat worden. Maar dan praten we over laten we de CCP-virus tijdperk noemen. Ja. Dus we hadden spertijd. Hè. We moesten om 9 uur moesten we binnen zijn. Dat moest. Dat moest voor jouw veiligheid. Echt te triest voor woorden. Er zijn rellen uitgebroken in Eindhoven. Ook in Amsterdam is er bloed gevloeid. Allemaal voor onze veiligheid zogenaamd. En ja, de mensen gaan als makke schaapjes, zoiets van dan gaan ze zeggen van ja oké, de politie heeft knuppels, we kunnen niks doen. We kunnen gewoon niks doen. En het is volg de leider maar, hè. Volg de leider. Echt heel, heel erg triest dat we ons zo laten verdelen door allerlei groeperingen die zeggen de waarheid in pacht te hebben. Echt heel, heel erg triest. Ik had toch wel iets anders verwacht van de gemiddelde Nederlander. Ik had toch wel verwacht dat we even naar onze geschiedenis zouden gaan kijken. En trots zouden zijn op datgene wat wij allemaal bereikt hebben als Nederland zijnde. En in plaats daarvan gaan we met de zweep op onze rug slaan. Nederland slavernij, VOC-tijd slavernij, bla 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 bla. Kijk ons nou, onze imperialistische gedrag over de hele wereld en bla bla bla. Ik heb het uitgelegd hoe Nederland een imperium werd. Ik heb het uitgelegd. Dat is niet middels geweld gegaan. Ja? Kijk, Engeland, die gaat dan naar een land toe, zoals hier Amerika, Canada. Die gaat hun vlag daar zo neerplempen op de grond. Hup, Engelse vlag, dit stuk is van Engeland. Spanje deed hetzelfde, hè. En ook Frankrijk, die 3 landen vooral. En ook Portugal, die was meer in Afrika bezig. Maar die 3 landen, die hebben vooral dat gedaan. Gewoon vlag neerplempen. En dit is van Frankrijk, of dit is van Spanje, of dit is van Engeland. Nou, hoe heeft Nederland dat aangepakt? Nederland, die ging dus naar Amerika toe. En die zag van, hé, er zijn hier Indianen. Die hebben een mooie vacht en zoiets. Dan kunnen we gaan handelen. Snap je? Dan kunnen we gaan ruilen. Ik geef jou dit voor dat. En zo is dus Nederland een imperium geworden. Dat ging niet middels geweld. En ook als we kijken naar Zuid-Afrika, daar kennen we de boeren. Nou, dat zijn dus mensen die hun leven hebben gewaagd om de troon van Nederland te ontsnappen. Ja, dat waren de boeren in Nederland. Die werden best wel lang vervolgd. Dus settlers, zeg maar, in Zuid-Afrika. Nou, dat geschiedenis hebben we ook al helemaal uitgelegd. En als we kijken naar de 2-staten-oplossing binnen het Midden-Oosten, waar Nederland eigenlijk zijn beste beentje moet voortzetten en zeggen, jongens, dit is de oplossing, hè? Niet elkaar wapens geven en zoiets. Nee, dit is de oplossing. En ja, dat zou eigenlijk moeten gaan gebeuren. Nederland zou intermediair moeten zijn daarin. Maar we zien hier zo in Zuid-Afrika, zien we ook een ander land, Lesotho. Ja, dus het kan wel. Het kan wel 2 landen binnen 1 gebied. Dus dat zou eigenlijk moeten gebeuren. De 2-staten-oplossing weer op tafel leggen. The 2-state solution, put that on table, right? And give land back to the Palestinians. And, that is a viable solution against all this violence that's happening within the Middle East, right? So put that on table, the 2-state solution, not 1 state, and give back the Golan Heights to Syria, right? Or split it apart. Israel, one part Lebanon, 1 part Syria, even though it is on Syrian ground, right? And that is disputed. But, do something with the Golan Heights, because that is a pressure point. Daar hebben we het ook over gehad, hè? De drukpunten in de wereld. De Golanhoogte, dat is een drukpunt. En ook de Kashmir-regio is ook een drukpunt. hier Kashmir. Wat Afghanistan zegt, dat is van ons. Pakistan zegt, dat is van ons. India zegt, dat is van ons. China zegt, dat is van ons. Dus zoveel landen op één gebied, dat gaat meestal niet zo heel erg goed. Dus weer heel wat geopolitiek gegeven mensen. That's what we do. We give geopolitics, right? We try to explain what's going on, and we're, looking at countries like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is in proxy war against the proxies that Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi are supporting. So, but it's a very big country, and they're not in the capital yet. So we're looking at that, and we're looking everywhere because it's our planet, our world, and not the world of the politicians who think they can run a country. So we're also looking at Brazil, because in October we have elections in Brazil, right? So, and the two big parties are the former president Lulu, that really is his name, Lulu, against Bolsonaro, the sitting president, right? So we're going to take a look at this here.
It was the first public debate between the two frontrunners in Brazil's presidential election. 6 candidates were on the stage.
Oh, it's
but
Lula.
all eyes
Sorry,
were on
Lula.
incumbent right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro and left-wing former leader Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Together, they have more than 70% of the votes. Lula, who governed Brazil from 2003 to 2010 and is leading the polls, blamed Bolsonaro for the country's rise in poverty.
The country I left is a country that people miss. It was a country of employment. It was a country where people had the right to live with dignity, with their heads held up. And this country will return.
Bolsonaro attacked Lula, accusing him of leading a political corruption scandal involving Brazil's state-run oil company Petrobras.
There was corruption. President Lula, you want to come back? What for? To keep doing the same thing at Petrobras?
Lula spent 19 months in prison before bribery convictions against him were annulled, putting him back on Brazil's political scene. Bolsonaro, who was trying to appeal to women voters, denied misogynistic claims against him. But during the debate, he attacked a female journalist who criticized his response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Vera, you sleep thinking about me. You're a disgrace to journalism.
Analysts say both frontrunners did poorly on Sunday, but that will unlikely influence the outcome of this unprecedented election.
So we're also watching Brazil, what's happening there, right? Elections in October, which is around the corner, and let's keep our eyes on Brazil and other places within this beautiful planet, because it is our planet. It is your country. And I say to you, people in Iraq, look at your country. Look at what you are doing to your own countrymen and women. Look at what you are doing. Listen to the voice of reason, right? You deserve a parliament which is for the people. And you don't want to fight the people for a new parliament. You want to reform parliament come together, sign a piece of paper, and say, this is what we want as a population. This is what we want, right? And hand it over to, someone within the political sphere of Iraq, right? This is what we want as people. We want representation within our own region. We want good schooling. We want good roads. We want good, we want work. We want this. We want that. We make a list of things that you want as a population. Do not follow a leader like al-Sadr or any other leader, because they will leave the stage. Al-Sadr quit politics suddenly because of some clashes. No, don't grab your weapons for that. Unite yourselves, Iraqi people, unite yourselves and put on paper what you want as a people and give it to the politicians. Aim the guns at the politicians. They need to work for you, right? So that's how you change a country. And don't think that you are the leader. No, no one is leader. Everyone is equal, right? Those were the ideals of the French Republic, right? So everyone is equal, and if you do wrong, you go to jail. And the state must be a small entity, right? We don't want an overbearing state. We don't want that. So I pray for the Iraqi people. I pray that there will be peace and no division anymore. Come together as a people, as a country, and aim the guns at the politicians, right? That's what's needed. And I hope this broadcast will eventually be shown in Baghdad or Tikrit or other cities in Iraq and elsewhere. We think of you. We light a candle for you. And we hope that one time in this world we will know peace. And we will have a government that will not be overthrown. And there are so many words to tell. We need to realize that we are living on this planet, and we need to realize that we need to respect the people on this planet and be aware of the powers that say that they have the power. So, thank you all for watching, and we'll see each other another time and another place. Dus dank u voor het kijken. We zien ons een andere keer. En doei doei. En we gaan naar voren. We gaan naar voren. Althans, RHTVLive die gaat gewoon door. Die vertelt wat er gaande is in de wereld. En we doen ons best. Dus, doei doei. En we zien ons later weer.